New York blazed with fireworks on Independence Night, but beneath that dazzling light, a heroic act was buried under a wave of hatred and prejudice. An old soldier, defying his age and their insults, plunged into the dark river to save a child. Yet, instead of thanks, he was met with scornful glares, bitter accusations, and the cold click of handcuffs. Will the truth ever emerge? And how will this city finally bow to its silent hero? The New York sky on the 4th of July was a canvas waiting for a masterpiece. Along the sprawling banks of the East River, humanity surged, a vibrant, undulating tapestry of faces, laughter, and anticipation. Macy's fireworks display was the main event, a dazzling promise of light and thunder. The air thrummed with excitement, a collective euphoria that vibrated through the very ground. Cheers rose in roaring waves, echoing off the water, a symphony of celebration. Lost within this joyous tumult, yet profoundly alone, stood Walter Lewis. Over 70 years old, his frame was draped in a faded, frayed military jacket, its shoulders bearing the phantom weight of past service. It was a relic, much like Walter himself, quietly observing the world that rushed past him. Around his neck, a single, gleaming U.S. Marine Corps medallion hung, the only polished thing about him, a silent declaration of a past he held dearer than life itself. It glinted faintly in the stray flashes of cell phone screens, a tiny beacon in a sea of indifferent faces. People jostled, screamed with delight, their phones held aloft, live streaming every burst of color. They pushed and shoved, their excitement bubbling over into aggressive impatience. Amidst the cheerful chaos, sharp, ugly words began to cut through the festive din, directed at Walter. "Hey, old black man, you're blocking the view," a voice snarled from behind, laced with an undisguised disdain. "Yeah, move it. This is our spot," another chimed in, echoing the sentiment. "A black man taking up space on Independence Day? Seriously? Go celebrate in your own neighborhood," a woman's voice shrilled, a venomous edge to her words that sliced deeper than any physical shove. The air, thick with celebration, now carried the bitter tang of open prejudice. They saw only his skin, his age, his quiet presence as an intrusion on their national holiday, their moment of joy. He was an outsider, an unwanted shadow on their bright canvas. Walter shrank slightly, his shoulders hunching almost imperceptibly, as if to make himself smaller, less of an inconvenience. He clutched the cold iron railing, his aged fingers trembling, a fragile anchor in a tempest of animosity. His eyes, clouded with years but still sharp with memory, remained fixed on the sky. He wasn't just watching the fireworks. He was looking through them, seeing echoes of a past where men like him had fought and bled for the very freedoms these people now so casually enjoyed and denied him. He remembered the arduous journey, the sacrifices, the pain that had built this powerful nation, this very city. Yet no one around him saw the history in his gaze, no one cared to look past his skin. And as he watched the sky, his eyes, ever vigilant, drifted lower, instinctively drawn to the edge of the river. There, precariously close to the churning, dark water, a group of children played, their innocent joy oblivious to the dangerous proximity. The deafening roar of a particularly massive firework explosion swallowed a tiny, desperate cry. A boy, no older than 4, had slipped from his mother's grasp. In the chaos of the crowd, he had wriggled through the gaps, crawling under the very iron railing Walter clung to. In a terrifying split second, the child's silhouette teetered at the very precipice of the riverbank. Then, with a quiet, sickening splash, he vanished into the black water. No one heard it. No one turned. The crowd was a monolith, their faces tilted skyward, their cameras flashing, transfixed by the dazzling spectacle above. "Beautiful fireworks!" someone shrieked, their voice swallowed by the next booming explosion. The child was gone, unseen, unheard, lost in the overwhelming celebration of a nation. The silent horror of the child's fall galvanized Walter. A primal instinct, honed by decades of survival, surged through his aged veins. He tried to cry out, to warn the oblivious crowd, but his voice, thinned by age, was a mere whisper against the explosive symphony of the fireworks. Each booming crescendo swallowed his desperate plea, mocking his helplessness. The celebratory bursts of light painted the sky, utterly deaf to the silent tragedy unfolding beneath them. He was old, yes, frail perhaps, but the sight of that small body disappearing into the dark, unforgiving water ignited a spark of his younger self, the Marine who never hesitated. With a surge of raw, unthinking reflex, his legs, despite their 70 years of burden, coiled and pushed. He lunged, a desperate, almost awkward vault over the cold iron railing. The splash was immediate, violent, scattering icy spray onto the faces of a few unsuspecting revelers nearby. They recoiled with shouts of annoyance. "Hey, what the hell was that? And watch it, old man." Some cursed at the unexpected dampness, but none truly registered the profound meaning of the disruption. Their attention, momentarily diverted, quickly snapped back to the sky, to the fleeting beauty of the explosions. The child's fate remained their secret, Walter's solitary burden. Beneath the surface, the East River was a chilling embrace of murky blackness. The cold seized Walter's limbs, an immediate shock to his system. Disoriented, his lungs burning, he thrashed, his old eyes straining in the impenetrable gloom. The deafening explosions above resonated through the water, a dull, concussive throb that disoriented him further. Find him now. The command echoed in his mind, overriding the agony of his protesting muscles. He fought against the strong current, his weakened body a poor match for the river's relentless pull. Time stretched, each second an eternity as he blindly swept his arms through the frigid water, a desperate prayer on his lips. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The surface remained undisturbed save for the shimmering reflections of the distant fireworks, mocking the unseen struggle below. Just as the last vestiges of air threatened to abandon his lungs, his fingers brushed against something soft, then slippery. A small, flailing limb. Relief, sharp and exhilarating, coursed through him, momentarily dulling the icy grip of the river. He clamped onto the child's tiny arm, then pulled the limp body close, cradling the unconscious form against his chest, shielding its head. With a renewed, almost superhuman effort, he began to kick, clawing his way back towards the elusive glimmer of the riverbank, towards the faint silhouette of the emergency ladder he remembered seeing. Every stroke was a battle, every breath a gasp of pain. The medallion, his precious Marine Corps emblem, tugged at his neck, a cold weight against his skin, a stark reminder of another life-or-death struggle in a distant, forgotten war. Finally, a gnarled hand, trembling with exhaustion, found the cold rung of the rescue ladder. With a grunt, Walter hoisted the child's limp body first, pushing him upwards onto the wet concrete. Then, with a final monumental effort, he dragged himself out, collapsing onto the damp ground, gasping for breath, the child still clutched protectively against his chest. Water streamed from his old, sodden clothes, forming puddles around him. The commotion, the sudden surfacing, had finally pierced the self-absorbed revelry of the crowd. The young mother, her eyes wide with dawning terror, had just registered the terrifying emptiness of her hand. Her frantic gaze swept the riverbank, her heart seizing as she saw the small, dripping form being pulled from the water. A primal scream tore from her throat, raw with panic. "My baby! My baby!" She lunged forward, her relief almost immediate, but as her eyes focused on the figure holding her child, her expression contorted. This wasn't the heroic, clean-cut image of a rescuer. This was an old black man, soaking wet, his clothes clinging to his emaciated frame, his face dark and streaked with water, illuminated harshly by the sudden, intrusive glow of nearby cell phone flashlights. The scene was utterly unlike the dramatic, feel-good movie moments she might have envisioned. Before Walter could even fully catch his breath, before the child could make a sound, a thunderous shout erupted from a burly young man, his face twisted in suspicion. "Hey, what are you doing with that kid?" Who gave you permission to touch him? Another voice, high-pitched and laced with accusation, joined in. Are you kidnapping him, old man? I'm live-streaming this. The child, still dazed and wet, began to stir, a tiny whimper escaping his lips. But before he could properly cry, his mother tore him from Walter's arms, her face a mask of revulsion and fear. She clutched her son protectively, as if the old man was a venomous snake. Get away from my son. How dare you touch him? You monster! Her voice was shrill, laced with a mix of terror and utter disgust. Walter could only heave, his chest burning, his hands still instinctively reaching out, trembling slightly, as if to calm the distraught child, to offer a silent reassurance. But the frantic reach was misinterpreted, seen as a predatory lunge. The crowd, now fully aware of the drama, swarmed closer, a human tide of suspicion and prejudice. Dozens of cell phones flashed, their cold, bright lights blinding him, pinning him like a specimen. Harsh, venomous words rained down on him, each one a fresh assault. Look at him, soaked wet, probably just trying to steal something. He's black, what do you expect? Probably some kind of pervert. This is New York. Anything can happen. Don't trust anyone, especially not one of them. The venom in their voices, the swift, baseless accusations based solely on his appearance, felt heavier, more crushing than the cold river water. The celebration had turned into a witch hunt, and Walter, the silent hero, had become the villain. His selfless act twisted into a crime by the prejudice of the very people he had saved. The young mother, clutching her child as if he were a fragile, stolen jewel, continued to scream at Walter, her voice shrill with a terrifying mix of fear and rage. Stay away from my baby, you fiend. Her words were like venom, echoing the ugly accusations of the surrounding mob. The child, still trembling and wet, let out a small, muffled cry, trying to reach out to Walter, whispering, "Mister!" But his mother quickly pulled him away, shushing him roughly, covering his mouth. Just then, a Port Authority officer, alerted by the commotion, pushed through the frantic crowd. His eyes scanned the scene, landing first on the crying mother and child, then on the soaking wet, disheveled old man. Without a moment's hesitation, without asking a single question, he reached for his belt. The cold click of handcuffs snapping shut behind Walter's back was shockingly loud, a sound that seemed to reverberate through his very bones. It wasn't just metal on metal. It was the crushing of dignity, the final, brutal blow to the last shred of self-respect he had left. The badge, the medal of honor, the weight of his sacrifice, all seemed to vanish in that sickening click. A collective sigh of satisfaction rippled through the onlookers. A wave of triumphant jeers rose from the crowd. Several people, their faces alight with a perverse sense of justice, cheered, holding their phones even higher, capturing every detail of the old man's humiliation. Caught him red-handed, one shouted, zooming in. A kidnapper on fireworks night. Serves him right. Another gleefully commented into their camera. Their joy was a bitter counterpoint to the distant, celebratory fireworks, a testament to how quickly a hero could be condemned. Walter stood in silence, his shoulders slumped, his wrists bound. The weight of the water in his clothes felt heavier than before, almost as heavy as the weight of the crowd's judgment. His eyes, clouded with a profound sadness, found the child's tear-filled gaze for a fleeting moment. He saw the innocence, the fear, and the glimmer of recognition that was quickly stifled by the mother. Then, his gaze dropped to his chest, a flicker of panic replacing the sorrow. The Marine Corps medallion, his precious heirloom, the only tangible link to his proud past, was gone. Torn from his neck in the scramble, lost somewhere in the dark, churning river, a final, devastating casualty of this night. He was stripped bare, his honor unseen, his heroism denied, his most cherished possession gone. Not a single soul stood by him, defended him, or questioned the injustice. Amidst the swirling chaos, a young woman stood on the periphery, her hands shaking as she live-streamed the entire event. She was an anonymous, aspiring content creator, her usual streams barely garnering a handful of views. Driven by an instinct she couldn't quite explain, she had kept her camera rolling from the moment the child slipped. Her shaky angle had unintentionally captured the crucial seconds. The little boy tumbling over the railing, and the old man, a mere shadow against the exploding lights, diving in after him without a second thought. Her raw, unfiltered footage was quickly buried among hundreds of other videos that night, all echoing the mob's narrative of a kidnapper caught. But within a few hours, as the first embers of dawn touched the New York skyline, her unedited clip began to stand out. It went viral, spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Its title a stark, undeniable truth. Hero old man handcuffed on Independence Night. The truth, slow and painful, was finally beginning to surface. The first light of dawn, pale and hesitant, crept over the New York skyline, painting the bruised morning sky in hues of soft gray and rose. But below, a different kind of light was breaking. Newsrooms across the city, already buzzing from the viral video of the kidnapped child and the hero old man, were now digging deeper. The anonymous live streamer's unedited footage, meticulously reviewed, had become the crucial piece of evidence, forcing a re-evaluation of the chaotic night. Within hours, the dam broke. Major news outlets, driven by journalistic imperative and the insatiable hunger of the internet, unearthed dusty records, cross-referenced databases, and pieced together a story that stunned the city into a collective silence. The name that began to flash across screens, scroll on news tickers, and blare from radios was Walter Lewis. He was 73 years old, a retired United States Marine Corps veteran. His service record spanned an astonishing 18 years, a lifetime of dedication and sacrifice. But it was a particular entry that sent shockwaves through the nation. The Distinguished Service Medal, awarded for an act of extraordinary heroism. Years ago, off the coast of Iraq, his vessel had been struck by a missile. Without hesitation, defying the chaos and the inferno, Walter Lewis had plunged into the burning sea, single-handedly rescuing 9 comrades from the sinking ship. He didn't just save lives. He embodied the very spirit of courage the 4th of July was meant to celebrate. Suddenly, old photographs, long forgotten in archived military files, began to resurface, splashed across every newspaper and news website. Images of a younger Walter, strong and resolute in his crisp Marine uniform, appeared. One particular photo went viral. A stoic Walter, his face streaked with sweat and grime, carrying a wounded comrade over his shoulder, giving a thumbs up from beside a rescue helicopter, a faint, weary smile on his lips. These weren't pictures of a dirty old man or a kidnapper. They were the indelible proof of a true American hero. The revelation hit the city like a thunderclap. The young mother, who had so vehemently cursed Walter, now stood trembling inside the sterile confines of the police precinct. Her face was pale, streaked with fresh tears of shame and horror, as she watched the unedited video loop on a monitor. The girl who had live-streamed the entire event was also there. Her shaky original clip now the irrefutable truth, the undeniable proof of Walter's innocence. Her accidental footage had done more than just go viral. It had righted a profound wrong. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the rapidly escalating public outcry, the police had no choice. They moved swiftly to rectify their mistake. The cold metal cuffs were removed from Walter's wrists, the shackles of injustice finally released. They offered apologies, stammered explanations, but Walter Lewis, the man who had just been publicly humiliated and falsely imprisoned, accepted his freedom with a quiet, dignified silence. He didn't speak much. He didn't demand retribution or recognition. He simply walked out of the precinct, his faded veteran's jacket still damp with the lingering scent of the East River, his worn military boots squelching slightly with every step. He vanished into the morning streets, a lone, humble figure, leaving behind a city grappling with its collective guilt. That very night, as the echoes of the previous night's fireworks still seemed to hum in the air, something extraordinary happened. Word had spread, fueled by guilt and a desperate need for redemption. Hundreds of strangers, ordinary New Yorkers from every walk of life, gathered at the very spot along the East River where Walter had been so unjustly treated. They stood in quiet anticipation, their faces etched with a shared sense of profound regret. Then he appeared. Walter Lewis, wearing the same old jacket, his gait still weary. As he approached the river's edge, a ripple went through the crowd, then an eruption. They didn't cheer boisterously. They applauded, a gentle, heartfelt wave of appreciation, a collective apology without words. And then, a young man stepped forward, his eyes shining with unshed tears. In his outstretched hand, nestled on a clean cloth, was the missing Marine Corps medallion, its brass glinting softly under the city lights. Someone had found it, retrieved it from the murky depths, a symbol of honor restored. Walter took the medallion. His fingers, still slightly swollen from the handcuffs, closed around the familiar weight. No tears fell from his eyes. His gaze, old and weary, slowly lifted to the sky, where remnants of fireworks still streaked across the dark canvas. This time, as he looked at the sky, he wasn't looking through prejudice or sorrow. He was looking at his own freedom, his own honor finally recognized. No one was turning their back on him now. The city, in its silent, collective act of reverence, had finally bowed to its true hero. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts or opinions about this story, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Your support means the world. Thank you again.